Welcome to the Midnight Voice. If you're new here, this channel is dedicated to real experiences, the kind of stories that don't feel dramatic while they're happening, but stay with you long after. If you have a personal story you'd like to share, something strange, unsettling, or simply hard to explain, you can send it to the Gmail listed in the description. I read through submissions, and some are featured in future episodes. Now, let's get into tonight's story. Ethan wasn't trying to do anything reckless. The road trip had been planned for months. He was relocating from Dallas to Phoenix for a new job, and instead of flying, he decided to drive. He liked long drives. They gave him time to think, to process change. The desert highway between West Texas and Arizona was supposed to be calm, predictable. It was neither. By the time he crossed into New Mexico, it was later than he'd expected. Construction near El Paso had delayed him nearly 2 hours. He kept telling himself he'd stop at the next decent-sized town, but towns became smaller and farther apart the deeper he went. At 11:58 p.m., he noticed how empty the highway had become. No headlights in front of him. No headlights behind him. Just a long stretch of asphalt and darkness pressing in from both sides. The desert at night doesn't feel dramatic. It feels indifferent. Flat land stretching outward in every direction. No trees close to the road. No houses with porch lights. Just open land and sky. At 12:17 a.m., his fuel light came on. Ethan glanced at the dashboard and felt a small wave of irritation. He knew he should have filled up earlier. The gauge showed he had about 35 miles left. He opened his GPS and searched for gas stations. One appeared 12 miles ahead. No reviews. No photos. Just a name and a square location marker off Highway 62. That was enough. He kept driving. The 12 miles felt longer than they should have. The road began to narrow slightly, and the reflective lane markers were spaced farther apart. His headlights seemed weaker out there, even though they weren't. At 12:36 a.m., he saw it. A small gas station sitting alone off the right side of the highway. 2 pumps under a metal canopy. A low rectangular building with large front windows. 1 fluorescent light flickering above the door. No cars. No movement. He pulled in slowly, gravel crunching under his tires. The moment he turned off the engine, the silence felt heavier than it had on the highway. No insects. No wind. No distant hum of traffic. Just stillness. He stepped out and stretched his legs. The air was cooler than he expected. Dry. Sharp. The building lights were on, but something looked off. The windows were covered from the inside. Not boarded up, just blocked by what looked like sheets or thick paper taped across the glass. He walked to the door and tried the handle. Locked. A small sign hanging inside read "Open." He frowned and stepped back. Maybe it was a pay-at-the-pump setup only. He inserted his card into the pump. For a second, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered. Approved. Fuel began pumping. Ethan leaned against his car and scanned the empty horizon. The desert beyond the gas station was completely black. His headlights didn't reach far enough to illuminate anything past the pumps. Halfway through fueling, he felt something change. Not a sound at first. More like the awareness that someone was near. He straightened up. That's when he heard it. A soft step behind him. Not on gravel. On pavement. Slow. Measured. He turned around immediately. No one. The pump stood empty. The building door still closed. The desert beyond it silent. He waited. Nothing. He told himself it was the metal canopy contracting in the cool air. The pump clicked once. $27.43. Then the footsteps came again. This time closer. Behind his left shoulder. He spun around faster. Still no one. The space was too open for someone to hide. The building walls were flat. No large dumpsters. No parked vehicles. Nowhere someone could stand without being visible. His chest tightened. Relax, he muttered to himself. The pump stopped suddenly. $40 exactly. He hadn't selected a preset amount. He stared at the number for several seconds. It didn't change. He removed the nozzle slowly and placed it back. He waited for a receipt. Nothing printed. The screen went blank. Ethan walked toward the building again. He pressed his face closer to the glass. The interior looked dim. No cashier. No shelves. No products visible. Just empty space. He stepped back. That's when he noticed something else. There were no security cameras. No trash cans. No price sign showing fuel cost. Just pumps and a building. He hadn't noticed before. His phone buzzed in his pocket suddenly. He nearly jumped. It was a weak signal notification. No service. He looked at the top of his screen. 0 bars. He hadn't checked earlier, but he was certain he had service on the highway. Another step echoed behind him. Slow. Heavy. Close enough this time that he felt it vibrate through the pavement. He didn't turn around immediately. He didn't want to see empty space again. Instead, he walked quickly to his car and got inside. Locked the doors. Started the engine. As he shifted into reverse, he finally glanced in the rearview mirror. For a split second, he thought he saw someone standing near pump 2. Tall. Still. Facing him. But when his brake lights illuminated the area, there was nothing there. He backed out and turned toward the highway. As he reached the exit of the small lot, every light at the gas station shut off simultaneously. The canopy. The building. All of it. Total darkness. He stopped instinctively and looked back. The structure was still there. But completely unlit. No flicker. No glow. Just a black shape against a darker sky. He drove back onto Highway 62. His headlights felt stronger again once he reached the road. Within 5 minutes, his phone signal returned. He exhaled slowly, realizing he'd been gripping the steering wheel too tightly. After about 20 minutes, he checked his GPS again out of curiosity. He zoomed out. There was no gas station listed behind him. He zoomed in carefully along the stretch he had just driven. Nothing marked. He pulled over briefly and searched manually for nearby stations. The closest one was 48 miles ahead. No mention of the one he'd just used. He told himself the map data might be outdated. That was the simplest explanation. When he stopped at the next major town around 1:45 a.m., he checked his banking app while sitting in his parked car. No pending fuel charge. He refreshed the app twice. Nothing. His tank was full. Completely full. He stood outside his car under the gas station canopy in the town, staring at the fuel gauge as if it might change. It didn't. He never found that station again. 6 months later, while telling the story to a coworker, Ethan tried to retrace the route online. He switched to satellite view. There was no building anywhere near the coordinates where he believed he had stopped. Just empty desert. Flat and undisturbed. He doesn't drive at night anymore if he can help it. And he never lets his tank drop below half. Maya didn't usually drive at night, but this trip didn't leave her much choice. She had accepted a new job in Denver and decided to drive from Chicago instead of shipping her car. It felt practical. It also felt like closure. A long road separating her from a city she didn't plan to return to. She left around noon, confident she would reach western Nebraska by evening and stop somewhere decent. The weather was clear, traffic manageable, and the drive uneventful for the first few hours. By the time she crossed into rural Nebraska, the landscape had flattened into open fields stretching endlessly in every direction. The sky felt larger out there. Fewer buildings. Fewer exits. Fewer signs. At 6:52 p.m., she stopped at a rest area just off the highway. It wasn't completely empty. A semi-truck was parked far to the left side of the lot, engine off. A silver SUV sat near the picnic tables. The restroom building lights were on, casting a dull yellow glow across cracked pavement. Maya grabbed her keys and phone and stepped out. The air was cooler than she expected. Quiet, but not unnaturally so. Wind brushed lightly across the fields beyond the rest stop. Inside the restroom, there was no one else. She washed her hands, checked her reflection briefly, and returned to her car. She unlocked it with the remote and got back in without thinking twice. She continued driving. About 20 minutes later, just as the sun dipped fully below the horizon, she glanced into her rearview mirror out of habit. For a moment, she thought she saw something in the back seat. A shape. Dark. Sitting upright. Her breath caught. She blinked and adjusted the mirror. It was just shadow from the fading daylight. The back seat was empty. Her purse was in the passenger seat. The trunk held her luggage. She exhaled slowly. Long drives can do that. Your eyes fill in shapes that aren't there. She turned on the interior light briefly while driving to double-check. Empty. She turned it back off. 10 minutes passed. Night settled quickly over the highway. The road became darker, illuminated only by her headlights and occasional reflective markers. At 7:38 p.m., she checked the mirror again. The shape was back. This time clearer. Like someone leaning slightly forward in the middle seat. Her stomach tightened. She immediately turned her head to look directly behind her. The seat was empty. She swallowed and kept driving. Her heart was beating faster now, but she forced herself to breathe normally. She adjusted the mirror downward so it pointed at the back seat more clearly. Nothing. She adjusted it back. For several miles, she refused to look at it again. But curiosity eventually won. At 8:04 p.m., she glanced up. The shape was closer. Not solid. But not random shadow either. It resembled the outline of shoulders. She pulled onto the shoulder of the highway abruptly, hazard lights flashing. Gravel crunched beneath her tires. She stepped out and opened the back door. The seat was empty. No smell. No disturbance. No signs anyone had entered. She even checked under the seats. Nothing. She stood outside her car for nearly a minute, listening to the wind move across the fields. The highway remained mostly empty. A single truck passed in the distance. She got back into the driver's seat and locked the doors manually this time. As she merged back onto the highway, she avoided the mirror completely. Night driving requires focus. She kept her eyes forward, hands steady on the steering wheel. At 8:46 p.m., she heard something she couldn't explain. Breathing. Soft. Slow. Behind her. Her spine stiffened. The sound wasn't loud. It wasn't exaggerated. Just steady inhaling and exhaling. She didn't look. She didn't want to confirm what she was afraid of seeing. The breathing continued for nearly 20 seconds. Then stopped. The silence afterward felt worse. She told herself it was air passing through the vents. Road noise echoing strangely. Imagination fueled by darkness. At 9:03 p.m., she adjusted her mirror slightly, just enough to catch a partial reflection. For half a second, she thought she saw eyes. Low. Watching her. She slammed her hand against the mirror and turned it upward toward the ceiling. Her hands were shaking now. She accelerated. The highway signs indicated the next town was 18 miles ahead. Those 18 miles felt longer than the entire trip so far. At 9:24 p.m., she reached the outskirts of a small town and pulled directly into a brightly lit gas station. Fluorescent canopy lights flooded the parking area. She put the car in park and stepped out immediately. Opened the back door. Empty. But the back seat fabric felt warm. She placed her hand flat against it to be sure. It was noticeably warmer than the front passenger seat. She stepped back slowly. A man fueling his truck nearby glanced at her briefly before looking away. She felt embarrassed, suddenly aware of how paranoid she must appear. Inside the gas station, she bought a bottle of water and stood under the harsh lighting longer than necessary. She watched her reflection in the glass doors. Nothing behind her. No unusual shapes. When she returned to her car, she hesitated before opening the driver's door. The interior looked normal. Calm. Still. She drove the remaining miles to a motel in that town and requested a ground floor room near the office. She didn't tell the receptionist why. That night, she parked directly under a security camera. Before going inside, she opened every door again. Empty. When she finally lay down in the motel bed, she stared at the ceiling for nearly an hour. At 11:58 p.m., her phone buzzed. A notification from her car's app. Rear door opened. Her chest tightened instantly. She sat up in bed. The app showed a timestamp matching the current time. She stared at the screen, unsure whether to call the police or check it herself. The notification disappeared after a few seconds. She refreshed the app. Nothing unusual. She forced herself to stay inside the room. In the morning, she went outside early. Her car doors were locked. No signs of forced entry. But the rear door handle felt slightly loose. Like it had been pulled repeatedly. Maya completed the drive to Denver during daylight hours only. She never drove alone at night again. Sometimes, when she checks her rearview mirror now, she still adjusts it downward quickly. Just to be sure. Aaron and Luke hadn't planned to stop there. They were driving north through California after spending 3 days visiting friends in San Diego. The idea was simple: take Highway 99 up toward Sacramento, then cut west the next morning. Nothing adventurous. Just two friends stretching out a weekend trip before going back to work. By 12:40 a.m., they were both exhausted. The road had grown darker and emptier the farther north they drove. Fewer cars. Fewer exits. The occasional cluster of lights in the distance marking a town that barely felt awake. Luke was driving when they saw the sign. Motel, exit 214, vacancy. Aaron checked his phone. The nearest larger city was still 40 minutes away. Let's just stop, Luke said. We'll drive fresh in the morning. They took the exit. The motel sat about a quarter mile off the highway. One long, single-story building shaped like a sideways L. Faded paint. Fluorescent lights humming under the roof overhang. A small office at the corner with a lit sign that said open. The parking lot was almost empty. One pickup truck near the far end. No other vehicles. They parked directly in front of the office. Inside, the air smelled faintly like cleaning chemicals and something older underneath. The receptionist was a middle-aged woman with short hair and a blank expression. She barely looked up when they entered. 2 beds, Luke said. She slid a clipboard across the counter. No small talk. No questions about where they were headed. After a few minutes, she handed over a metal key attached to a plastic tag. Room 6. Luke grabbed it and thanked her. She didn't respond. Room 6 was about halfway down the row. Aaron noticed something small as they walked. The room numbers weren't evenly spaced. There was a 3, then 4, then 5, and then a gap before 7. He slowed slightly. "Did you see a 6?" he asked. Luke shrugged. "Maybe it's on the corner." They reached a door with a small plaque that clearly read 6. Luke unlocked it. The room was ordinary. 2 double beds. Beige carpet. A dresser with a small television. A bathroom tucked into the corner. The air inside felt slightly cooler than outside. Aaron stepped in first and flipped on the light. Everything looked clean enough. No visible stains. No strange smells. They locked the door behind them and set their bags down. Luke took the bed closest to the door. Aaron took the one near the bathroom. They talked quietly for a few minutes about the drive, then both agreed to leave early in the morning. By 1:25 a.m., the lights were off. Aaron fell asleep almost immediately. He woke at 2:43 a.m. He didn't know what had woken him at first. The room was dark except for a faint line of light beneath the bathroom door. He blinked slowly. The bathroom light was on. He was certain they hadn't left it on. Aaron assumed Luke had gotten up to use it. He turned slightly toward Luke's bed. Luke was asleep. Facing the wall. Breathing evenly. Aaron sat up halfway. The bathroom door was closed. The light beneath it flickered once. He waited for the sound of the toilet flushing. Running water. Movement. Nothing. He felt a quiet pressure building in his chest. After about 30 seconds, he swung his legs over the side of the bed. "Luke," he whispered. Luke stirred but didn't wake fully. Aaron stood and walked toward the bathroom. The closer he got, the more aware he became of how quiet the room was. He placed his hand on the bathroom door handle. It was warm. He turned it slowly and pushed the door open. The bathroom was empty. The sink was dry. The shower curtain hung still. The mirror was fogged lightly, like someone had just taken a hot shower. Aaron stepped inside. The floor tiles were slightly warm under his bare feet. He turned off the light. When he walked back out, Luke was sitting upright in bed. "You turned that on?" Luke asked. "No." They stared at each other for a long moment. Luke got up and checked the room's main door. Locked. The chain secure. He checked the window. Closed. They stood in silence. "Probably wiring," Luke said finally. "Old place." Aaron nodded, though the explanation didn't sit right. They turned the lights back off and returned to bed. Neither fell asleep quickly. Around 3:18 a.m., Aaron heard whispering. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear. It sounded like 2 voices speaking softly behind a wall. He held his breath. Luke must have heard it too, because he whispered from across the room, "You hear that?" Aaron didn't answer immediately. The whispering seemed to come from the bathroom again. Low. Indistinct. Like conversation happening underwater. Luke stood up this time before Aaron could. He turned on the lamp near his bed. The whispering stopped instantly. Luke walked to the bathroom and opened the door. Dark. Empty. Aaron looked toward the front door. For a brief second, he felt certain someone was standing outside it. Not knocking. Just there. Watching through the thin gap between curtain and window. He stepped closer and pulled the curtain aside suddenly. The parking lot was empty. The pickup truck was gone. Only their car remained under the fluorescent lights. They didn't sleep after that. At 5:57 a.m., the sky began to lighten slightly. They packed their bags quickly. Before leaving, Aaron looked at the bathroom one more time. The mirror was clear now. No fog. No condensation. They walked to the office to return the key. The door was locked. The open sign was off. Luke knocked. No response. Aaron tried calling the number posted on the door. It went straight to voicemail. They waited for several minutes before deciding to just leave the key in the drop box beside the door. As they walked back to their car, Aaron noticed something again. The room numbers. There was 3. Then 4. Then 5. Then 7. Number 6. He stopped walking. "Luke," he said quietly. Luke followed his gaze. The door they had exited from had no number on it at all. Just blank metal. They both turned slowly toward the office. The entire motel looked different in daylight. Smaller. Shorter. Aaron counted the doors carefully. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. There were only 5 rooms. They stood there for nearly a full minute without speaking. Luke walked back toward the door they had used. It wouldn't open. The handle didn't move. The curtains inside were gone. The window revealed an empty storage space. Concrete floor. No beds. No furniture. Aaron's stomach felt hollow. They got into the car without another word and drove back toward the highway. Halfway up the entrance ramp, Aaron checked his email for the booking confirmation. There wasn't one. Luke checked his bank account. No charge. They didn't talk about it again after that day. But Aaron still has the key. A small metal key with a plastic tag clearly labeled 6.